Hello, students, and welcome back. This is Modular 2 of Human Services 20, and this chapter is entitled Social Work and Other Helping Professions. I'm going to take you through slides 1 through 12 on the first video, and then we will have a second video that will take you through the remainder of the slides. So let's go ahead and get started. First question you need to ask yourself in terms of thinking about social work, and particularly with other helping professions, is what is it that causes, or what is behind why people have problems? People have problems in terms of functioning, in terms of the life that they're living. And why does that happen? Is it the same for everybody, or do people have different experiences that result in different kinds of outcomes? So the book and the authors talk about a variety of different reasons behind why people have problems. And the first one that they identify is genetics and heredity. So this is basically what you're born with. It's the psychobiology, which is defined as the interaction between the biological factors and the environmental factors in understanding human behavior. So the way to think about this, I think, is that the environmental factors are the environments that you live in. And we mentioned this a little bit in the previous chapter, but think about all of the different environments that you live in. You may have a work environment, you have a home environment, you may have a social environment, you may have an environment when you regularly go to a gym, or you have a school environment. That's another environment that you have. And think about the biological factors, the way that different people process information differently. Biological factors could also mean that you're taking a look at physical disabilities. So what is it like for somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing to be able to operate in their work environment? And is there a need for accommodations between their work environment and the disability that they're experiencing? And if those accommodations aren't provided, what kind of stressors or problems does that result in somebody trying to do their job living with that disability? So that's the way to think about the genetics and the heredity piece. Socialization. Socialization is the process of learning to become a human being in the simplest of terms. People are socialized differently. It has a lot to do with the family that you're raised in, has a lot to do with the experiences maybe that your parents had in terms of the way that their parents raised them. And it really is your family, as well as probably your early schooling, that plays a significant role in how you interact with other people. Again, socialization is the way we acquire knowledge, values, abilities, and skills that are necessary to function as a member of society. It's the way we learn to become a social being again. The next item is cultural differences. So there may be very unique ways and very unique approaches to life and life's challenges that has a lot to do with either your ethnicity, your race, your gender identity, or possibly even your sexual orientation. So when you are being raised in a community that is not supportive of differences in terms of sexual orientation, that there is not a way to be able to discover or find people like you. And in this situation, when we talk about sexual orientation, we're talking about gay, lesbian, bisexual identity. You may be living in a very isolating environment because of the fact that there is no community that's available to you. And in that situation, it can cause a lot of stressors for you. If you're living in a community where there may be a youth center that has special programs specifically for LGBT youth, if you have a school that's very positive and maybe has a Gay Straight Alliance, a GSA, which is a club that often is formed on campuses around LGBT students, then that's going to be a very different experience for you. So that's one way to be able to think about those cultural differences and why it can or cannot result in people experiencing problems. Continuing with this discussion, it could be environmental factors, neighborhoods, cities, counties. Think about living in a neighborhood that where the nearest grocery store is several miles away, that your only option in terms of purchasing food is your corner liquor store. Are you going to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables? Are you going to have access to things like low-fat milk or a whole wheat bread? Those healthier choices that often can make a difference between whether you feel good or whether you don't feel good. What if there are no parks in your neighborhood? What if it's not a safe neighborhood? So going out in the evening and exercising, meaning going out to go for a walk, is something that you just don't do. Those are all of the kinds of environmental factors that you might take a look at in a particular neighborhood that may result in people experiencing stressors or problems. Excuse me. And then finally, opportunity structure, the accessibility of opportunities for an individual within that person's environment. This can include personal and environmental factors such as physical traits, meaning someone who's born with a unique physical trait or disability, intellectual factors, someone who is born with intellectual challenges, family factors, someone whose family structure might be non-traditional. So many years ago, being a child in a single parent household was very unusual. And there may have been a lot of stigma or shame that was placed on somebody who was living in a child who might be living in that kind of a family structure. Obviously, that's not the same anymore, but maybe today we can take a look at maybe same-sex parents, or maybe somebody being raised by their grandparents. Maybe that might be a very unique or very different kind of family structure than the rest of their peers come from. And that could cause stressors or challenges for that particular person. And then finally, the availability of employment opportunities within the community the individual resides in. So if you're living in a community where there's very little economic opportunity or employment opportunities, that could obviously be a stressor and could cause problems. So the next thing we want to take a look at is some definitions of social work. And there are obviously various definitions, but here's a global definition of social work. Social work strives to help individuals, groups, or communities enhance or restore their capacity for social functioning and create conditions favorable to that goal to promote human and community well-being. So let's break that down a little bit. We've talked a little bit before in the last chapter about who are the different client groups, so that you could be working with individuals, you could be working with families, you could be working with groups, you could be working with communities. So all of those are listed here in this global definition of social work. And what you're working on is trying to improve, enhance, restore their ability to be able to function and to be able to create conditions that are favorable to them being able to be successful in those communities that they may be challenged in. You're also looking at promoting human and community well-being. Social work focuses on the interactions between people and their social linkages, which affect the ability of people to accomplish their life tasks, alleviate distress, and realize their aspirations and values. So interactions between people and their social linkages. Who are your social linkages? Obviously your family, the people you work with, the people you go to school with. And again, if there's friction or if there's disagreements or if there's stress that presents itself within those relationships, it can get in the way of somebody being able to achieve their life tasks and to realize their aspirations and values. And social work addresses problems encountered by people while in the process of living life. I love that definition. I think it's the simplest and cleanest way of being able to think about social work, that it's really looking at addressing the problems encountered by people while in the process of living their life. As a social worker, you work with your clients to be able to help them identify what the problems are and to really sort of drill down in terms of what are the cause of those problems. And then you look for ways for them to be able to either reduce or eliminate the impact of those problems or to learn how to cope more successfully with those problems. One of the things that the authors talk about and what is important for social workers to be aware of is the organization known as the National Association of Social Workers. This is the closest thing I can think of that you might be familiar with is sort of like the union. It's our organization, our national organization that all social workers can become affiliated with. It was established in 1955. The major national professional organization for social workers, promotes ethics and quality in social work practice. It encourages political participation and social action and maintains eligibility standards for membership. So this again is the guiding force in terms of new and evolving information about social work. It's where you can go for resources and support, and really a nationally recognized affiliation for social workers. What is the mission of social work? Well, our primary mission is to enhance human well-being, help meet the basic needs of all people. We're looking particularly with attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. Social workers help people identify and manage the environmental forces that create, contribute to, and address problems in living. And that comes directly from the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. So along with the mission, we also want to take a look at the values of social work. The values are listed here and include service, social justice, dignity and worth, the importance of human relationships, integrity, competency. And I want to go back and take a look at these a little bit deeper. Service, pretty self-explanatory. We're here to serve. Social justice, we're looking to uphold equal rights, protections, opportunities, and social benefits to everyone. Every person is unique and worthwhile. That goes back to our sort of worthy and unworthy poor. In terms of social work today, we're really looking at the fact that everyone is worthy. The importance of human relationships. People are not meant to live in isolation. People appreciate and they thrive when they're in positive relationships with other people. And so it's important for us to know that, be aware of it, be conscious of it, and be working with our clients towards achieving that. And then integrity, we have to be trusted. And so that means that we have to be consistent in what we say, we have to be honest in the information that we can provide, and that leads to us being considered trustworthy. And then competency, which means that we are practicing within the scope of known skills and abilities. So based on the knowledge that we have, we're making informed decisions, we're advising people with information behind us to be able to substantiate what it is that we're saying. So now we've talked about the mission and the values, and now we want to move on to the purposes of the social work profession. And this is based again on the Council on Social Work Education, which we talked about in Module 1. So the purposes of social work include enhancing human well-being, alleviating social injustice, enhancing social functioning and interactions of individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. You can see that the purposes very much align with the values. We want to formulate and implement social policies, services, and programs that meet basic human needs and develop human capacities. There is something that maybe some of you are familiar with called Maslow's hierarchy of need that really talks about that for someone to become self-actualized, become the best person that they can be, there are some fundamental things that people have to make sure that they have access to. How well are we able to operate when we don't have food, or we don't have a safe place to live, or a safe place to sleep, when we don't have human companionship? So that goes back to this idea that basic human needs are necessary in order for somebody to be able to be successful and to thrive. And part of our role is to try to address and make sure that people have those basic human needs met. The Council on Social Work Education, which accredits the bachelor's degree programs in social work, is the one who set up all of these purposes. Advocates for policies, services, and resources that promote social and economic justice. Develop and use research, knowledge, and skills that advance social work practice, and develop and apply practices in the context of diverse cultures. One of the things that I wanted to just speak to was the second bullet here: develop and use research, knowledge, and skills that advance social work practice. Social work is an always evolving, always changing discipline. You'll be a 70-year-old social worker still going to conferences and still looking at webinars and still reading articles, because information is constantly changing and evolving and new information is becoming available. And historically, what you've seen are people who are motivated in social work are often people who consider themselves to be lifelong learners. And so that idea that you're always gaining more knowledge and more skills is very apparent in terms of people who choose social work as a career. What are the tools of the profession? The first tool that we're wanting to talk about is knowledge. Social work education is built on knowledge, and that knowledge base is often focused on a liberal arts foundation. So for those of you who may not be familiar with it, a liberal arts foundation is basically a degree that many people achieve through taking a combination of all sorts of different kinds of classes, usually at the college level, obviously. Liberal arts foundation is often the starting place for many people who choose to be educators. So it's the idea that you learn a little bit about a lot of different things, and that's always a good foundation for social work education. So I've appreciated so much hearing so many of you say that, well, my degree's not in social work, but I thought this was something that was interesting, or my degree's in this, but I'm not sure that it's where I want to stay, and I thought I would explore social work. Really, any classes that you take, I think in the long run are going to benefit you as a social worker. Social workers have the knowledge and competencies, meaning the skills that are essential to perform certain functions regarding human behavior, policy, research, practice, social and economic justice, cultural diversity, and working with populations at risk. Here's the next tool in the profession, and that is ethics. Ethics, which are outlined through the NASW Code of Ethics. Social work ethics provide the basis for social work beliefs about individuals and societies. We very much, as individuals who become social workers, have to be able to set aside our own biases and our own opinions and be able to be effective with our clients. And one of the ways that we can make sure that we're helping and advising our clients in a way that's positive and is ethical is by relying on the NASW Code of Ethics. And we're going to talk a little bit more about these as we move further into the semester, but it is definitely one of the tools of our profession. The NASW Code of Ethics is the framework held by a group for determining what is right and wrong and how specific situations should be handled. I think maybe we've talked earlier, maybe last time, about the fact that the kind of decisions that social workers have to make are often not black and white. There's often very much shades of gray. So the idea that you may find yourself in situations where you're challenged in trying to determine what the right recommendation or the right information is to provide to a client is a very common experience for people who are in the field of social work. The code of ethics is something that you can turn to that will give you more guidance, more information to be able to help you feel more confident in the information you're providing or the decision that you're making. The National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics relates to the moral principles of social work practice. It talks about the right of the client or client systems to confidentiality. So what is said in a counseling session, what's said in a case management meeting is between you and the client and is not shared outside of that relationship. And also clients' right to self-determination. Clients feel that they need to be able to make their own decisions. So while you're providing information, you're providing resources, you may be sharing your opinion, you may be helping the client explore if this is the choice that's made, maybe these might be the outcomes, but if this is the choice that's made, possibly these might be the outcomes, helping them explore what might come from the particular decision they're working towards making. Ultimately, it's not you telling the client which decision to make, but you supporting the client so they can make the best decision. Sometimes clients will make a decision that you may not personally agree with. That is not your role. Your role is to support them in the decisions that they've made, and that's what we mean by self-determination. The last tool that we're going to talk about is plan change. Practice skills and process of plan change, an orderly approach to addressing clients' needs based on assessment, knowledge of the client system's capacity for change, and focused intervention. Oftentimes in social work, you'll be working with clients who come to you because they may say, this is something that I'm doing, it's not in my best interest, it's not helpful for me, I feel like it's impacting my relationships, my ability to work, my ability to be able to stay in school, and I would like to be able to change the way that I'm doing this particular thing, or I'd like to stop doing it if it's maybe something like consuming alcohol or drugs. To be able to move a client through that process, you need to have a plan. And there are specific steps that we're going to talk about more in the semester that you take a client through, starting with assessment, but then moving through a series of steps that hopefully will result in change occurring, but there's a plan that gets put in place, and there are these steps, one following the other, that a social worker uses in terms of moving a client through a plan change effort. Professional social work intervention is based on a process of plan change. So this is one of the professional strategies that we use. Change is indicated when clients present needs and problems that they cannot resolve themselves, and the social worker functions as the change agent in this particular process. I want to really emphasize here that the planning change process is a partnership between the social worker and the client. And often you will find yourself in a situation where you may actually even set up a sort of an informal agreement with a client. These are the things that I, as the social worker, agree that I'm going to do. But as the client, here are the things as the client that you've agreed to do. And it's a process of, it's a little bit of a dance, to be honest with you, in terms of the fact that a client may be really challenged in terms of accomplishing some of the pieces that you've mutually agreed upon that they are going to address. But a social worker must always be reminding of the client what they've committed to and help to support them to be able to successfully accomplish those objectives. So we're gonna take a break here, and I hope you'll move forward into the other pieces in the modular. And we'll pick this lecture up in the next or second video.